again, thanks for joining. We're just heading through these gates into the grounds of one of the most mysterious castles in Poland. We're in the Lower Silesia region of Poland, not far from the border with the Czech Republic, and today we're visiting Książ Castle. This is the third largest castle in Poland, but it didn't always belong to Poland, and it's had a very colourful past. However, some of its past was a very dark period and involves a mystery that remains to this day. In this video, I'll tell you about my visit to Książ Castle, and I'll take you inside the main castle building as it's getting prepared for Christmas. Show you the exterior of the castle and some of the grounds during the day and at night as we check out the wonderful Christmas garden of lights. And also take you deep underground as we discover an unexpected secret. We were also lucky enough to be able to book a room and stay at the castle. Well, technically not in the castle building, rather in one of the nearby supporting buildings that once housed servants and administrative staff. There are 3 very similar hotels here, and I stayed in Zamkowy, which I found to be very comfortable, clean and reasonably priced. It was also very quiet at night and had amazing views in the morning. Well recommended. We also ate a very good meal at the library restaurant right here in the gatehouse, which was very memorable. I'll tell you all about how much this cost, the price for the B&B at the hotel, the cost of the meal at the library restaurant, and how much it was for entry into the various parts of the castle at the end of this video. But for now, let's get on and enter through the gatehouse and visit the Książ Castle building first. And as we do, I'll tell you a potted history of the castle through the ages. By the way, as we head through the gatehouse, on the left here is Hotel Książ, along with the kitchens and dining area for both this hotel and Zamkowy, where I stayed. So we had breakfast in this building, which was really good. As the main castle building comes into view, let's step back to the 10th century, where legend has it that the first ever stronghold was built on this spot by a knight named Funkenstein. No real evidence of this exists, but there is speculation that this castle was built on the ruins of a previous wooden fort. However, we do know that around 1291 to 1293, a stone structure was built here under the orders of Duke Bolko I, or Bolko the Strict. He was pretty keen on developing his lands and building fortifications to defend it, and this is one such structure. It also seemed to have been named Forstenberg at that time. Now we're entering into the castle through this grand courtyard and enter into a room where your tickets are checked. You don't actually buy them here, there's a ticket office beside the gatehouse, or you can do what I did and buy a ticket online. You can also pick up an audio guide in various languages, which is included in the ticket price. And you'll also notice that the castle is readying itself for Christmas with the decorations here, and this is something you'll see as we make our way around the castle's tour route. You move on from here to an area where there's a small cafe and free lockers, before continuing on through to the grand staircase, which we make our way up. So back to Duke Bolko I. He suddenly died in 1301. And with his 4 sons too young to take over the lands, there was a bit of a fuss about what to do with the castle and the lands ruled by Bolko. Lots of complications ensued, but the castle basically ended up being owned by Kekulon von Czerna, who has the enviable title of Rebel Knight. But when Bolko II grew up, he decided to kick Kekulon out of the castle, claim it for himself, and expand it with some hefty fortifications. This was to protect against continued arguments with the nearby Kingdom of Bohemia, or basically the Czech Republic, which, as you remember from the map earlier, is quite close by. When Bolko II died in 1341 without an heir, ironically the castle and grounds fell under the Kingdom of Bohemia, and it was Charles IV of Luxembourg who now found himself the owner of the castle. Bolko's death could have left his widow Agnes in a bit of a pickle, but luckily there'd been a deal done with Charles to allow his wife to stay at the castle. Charles honoured this deal, probably more because Agnes was from the family of the House of Habsburg, and Charles likely didn't fancy causing a fuss between Bohemia and the Habsburgs, so she lived out the rest of her life here until her death in 1392. During this time too, it seems the castle was known as Fürstenstein, a name it retained right through to the end of World War II, but we'll get onto that mess soon. When Agnes died in 1392, Charles had already met his maker, so the castle ended up belonging to his son, King Wenceslas IV of Bohemia, who didn't much fancy keeping it, and promptly sold it into the hands of a Jan von Hottenheins. It then remained in his family for a few generations. But the fortifications were being eyed up for military purposes, and by 1463 the King of Bohemia, now George of Podbrady, subjugated them, and during the War of Succession for Silesia the castle was attacked by a persistent force of Hungarian troops, who were later joined by both Silesian and Lusatian state troops. This combined force eventually captured the castle, but over the next 20 years it was bought and sold to various people in sometimes very creative trades. Eventually in 1509 it was bought by Kunz von Hoburg, and this marks perhaps a golden period for the castle. Of course, the Hoburg name would eventually change to Hochberg, however the castle stayed in this family line right through to 1941. Significant changes were made to the castle between 1548 and 1555 when the first major reconstruction resulted in a grander Renaissance-style complex, and improvements continued under the Hochberg ownership, even though it was damaged during the 30 Years' War of 1618 to 1648. By 1738 the castle looked like this, a grand structure with numerous additional buildings close by. And the development of the castle and the estate continued, with, in 1844, the famous stables being added. We didn't actually have time to properly visit these stables to see the beautiful Silesian horses, but maybe next time. Anyway, back to the castle, and there was a marriage. Well, not in the castle, actually in London, UK, where in 1891 John Henry XV Hochberg tied the knot with the much younger Maria Theresa Cornwallis West, known as Daisy. They decided to move to Książ, which at the time was owned by John's dad, John Henry XI Hochberg. I'm not sure why JH XI had a son who was called JH XV rather than the 12th, so let me know in the comments if you know, please. Anyway, just 16 years later, JH XI died and JH XV inherited all his stuff, including Książ Castle. 2 years later, in 1909, John and Daisy started a major reconstruction of the castle, including adding a new wing, a facade with 2 cylindrical towers, and the main central tower. Basically all the things you see today when you visit. There's a whole section of the castle interior tour dedicated to this time period, and Princess Daisy remains one of the most significant residents of the castle throughout her life. Sadly though, she also witnessed the Hochberg dynasty falling upon hard times and the castle falling into its darkest time period. Princess Daisy gave us a highly detailed account of her time here, as she kept a very famous diary, and there's a whole section dedicated to that time as part of the castle tour. A whole video could be made of her life, but for now let's move forward to 1940, when Daisy, due to ill health, was moved to a more suitable villa in a nearby town. She was never to see Książ Castle again, and she died in 1943. Yet out in the grounds, a short walk from the castle, is the Hochberg family mausoleum, into which Daisy was to become the last member of the dynasty to be laid to rest here, but not for long, as with the Red Army approaching towards the end of the war, and with fears that this site could be desecrated, she was moved to another location, which to this day remains a secret. Let's get back to the castle though, and with the Hochberg family in financial ruin, it was up for sale once again. And who bought it? Well, it went to the state, the Third Reich. They began transforming the castle into one suitable for, let's say, a failed Austrian painter to use as a headquarters. As part of the changes, most of the historic interior decoration was unceremoniously destroyed, and a huge 40-metre deep elevator shaft was dug in the middle of the castle down to some newly excavated tunnels and an underground bunker. I'll get onto that in more detail in a bit when we visit these mysterious tunnels later in the video. After the war, Soviet troops were stationed in the castle for a while and swiped anything of value, leaving the building in a terrible state. When they eventually left, the local population also ransacked the building for anything else they could find of value, and it fell steadily into disrepair. Yet it wasn't the end for the castle, as by 1962 it had been secured by the Provincial Conservator of Monuments, a government organisation tasked with preserving historical buildings. And since 1974 it has seen continued renovations and preservation activities, which has made it into one of the best castles I've visited in a long time. As we make our way out to the main building now, we're going to head down a short walk to check out the underground bunker I mentioned earlier. Since 2018, you can go deep under the castle with a tour guide to walk through a tunnel complex that was built by slave labour during the Second World War. After a short walk along some castle walls, you enter a building where you can collect an audio guide in a range of languages, and then descend a number of flights of stairs into the tunnels. This is part of what was called Project Reese, or Project Giant in English, the largest mining and construction project of the Third Reich, and this part of the project is represented by these tunnels here cut into the rock under the castle. During the tour we're shown a number of video presentations in Polish. The audio guide told me how these tunnels were built between 1944 and the end of the war in 1945, and gave details of the various construction methods employed, not least of which was the horrendous use of concentration camp victims to undertake the work. Yet what remains a mystery is why this was actually being done. The elevator shaft from the castle down here seems obvious that it was designed to be a bunker to shield important people from attack. However, the thickness of the walls and the size of the tunnels hints at perhaps something more. Speculation includes that it could have been used as an underground production facility for creating more weapons, or perhaps it was a safe storage location for stolen gold and treasures, possibly even brought here by train, right into the underground complex. Personally, I think this was built as a nuclear fallout bunker, as it seems strong enough to survive nuclear blast from above, and had all the equipment for long-term living underground. But that's just a guess, and the real reason is still undiscovered. Will we ever know? Or do we really even actually want to know? Anyway, the underground tour is an optional extra to your ticket price and was certainly very interesting. I'd recommend you add that to your castle visit if you come here, but you do have to book a time slot. Anyway, as we emerge from the darkness of the tunnels, the sun has gone down and it's time for us to check out the Garden of Lights. This is an additional seasonal attraction at the castle which comes at an additional cost. It's not included in the castle and underground tour ticket. So, with another set of tickets in hand, we head on around the route in the gardens to see the wonderful Christmas light display. Just check this out. So let's talk about how much this all cost. I bought a ticket online for the self-guided tour around the castle with audio guide, plus the guided tour of the underground tunnels. This cost 79 zloty, or around £15.50, or €18.50. This is quite expensive for a Polish tourist attraction, I thought, but not expensive when compared to castle entry fees in other countries in Europe or the UK. For the Christmas lights, or the Garden of Light as it's called, I bought a ticket at the ticket office on the day, and this cost 39 zloty, or around £7.60 or €9.15. We also stayed one night at Hotel Zamkowy in this room, which was clean and comfortable and had this view. Quite impressive. The price here including breakfast was 376 zloty, or around £73 or €88. Bear in mind though, I did get a bit of a discount when I booked through booking.com, although you can book through other websites, and I'm not paid by Booking to mention them here. And we also had an evening meal for two at the Library restaurant in the Gatehouse, which was extremely well presented and included a main and dessert, plus Polish wine and beer, and this came to 332 zloty, or around £65 or €78 for two people. Almost as expensive as a hotel room and breakfast, but it was a very good meal. So in total for our Książ Castle experience, it was 826 zloty, or around £161 or €194, which I think is pretty good value, as the experience was one I'll never forget. that ends our visit to the castle, and we wait for our taxi to take us to the station. It's a great place to visit, steeped in interesting history and full of atmosphere. I heard it can get very busy in the summer, but as we visited the end of November it was nice and quiet, meaning we could take our time and enjoy it all. I hope you get a chance to visit the castle too, and thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos like this. I'll see you on my next video somewhere else in the world. See ya!